The sun was just beginning to sink behind the jagged ridges of the Arizona desert when Luke Carson rode into town. Dust clung to his boots, his hat hung low, and his horse limped from the long trail. Luke was a man of few words, hardened by loss and the lonesome silence of the plains. He'd spent years building his small ranch from nothing, scraping through drought and debt. That day he wasn't looking for trouble, just payment. But fate, cruel and strange, had other plans. The man who owed Luke for a prize stallion was a gambler named Hoyt. Everyone knew Hoyt's luck had run out. When Luke came to collect, Hoyt stood outside the saloon, trembling and broke, his pockets empty and eyes desperate. "I ain't got money, Carson," he said, voice quivering. "But I got something worth more than gold." Luke's jaw tightened. "You pay what you owe, or we settle this another way." Hoyt looked over his shoulder, then motioned to the back of his wagon. There, bound in rope and dirt, stood a young woman, barefoot, her dark hair braided, her wrists bruised but her eyes defiant. "She's Apache," Hoyt muttered. "Picked her up from a trader out east. She can work your ranch, clean, cook, do whatever you need. Take her and we're even." Luke's blood turned cold. "You're talking about a person, not property." But Hoyt only shrugged, spitting into the dust. "Ain't my problem. Debt's a debt." Luke looked at the girl. She said nothing, but her gaze cut through him, steady, proud, and full of fire. Something in those eyes made him pause. He knew what it meant to be trapped, to lose everything. Against his better judgment, he untied her ropes. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll take her. But she works for her freedom, not as payment." As they rode away from town, the girl sat behind him on the horse, silent as the wind. The horizon stretched endlessly ahead, painted in crimson and gold. Luke didn't know her name, didn't know that this decision would change his life forever. Days passed on the Carson ranch. The woman moved quietly, learning the land and its rhythm. She never complained, never cowered. When Luke tried to speak, she stayed silent, her expression unreadable. One evening, as he mended the corral, he saw her standing near the river, her hands raised toward the sky, whispering in a language he didn't understand. The setting sun bathed her in orange light, and for the first time, Luke saw her not as a captive, but as something powerful and sacred. He approached gently. "You've got a name?" he asked. She turned, her dark eyes meeting his. "Naili," she said softly. "It means I love you in my people's tongue." He froze, startled by the strength in her voice. "You speak English?" She nodded slightly. "I listen. I learn." Then she turned away, leaving him standing in awe. Weeks became months. Luke found himself drawn to her spirit. She worked with grace, tamed wild horses with calm patience, and sang soft songs at night that carried across the valley. The ranch, once lonely and broken, began to feel alive again. But one stormy night, everything changed. A group of riders thundered down from the hills, Apache warriors painted for war. Luke ran out with his rifle, ready to defend what little he had. But before he could fire, Naili stepped in front of him, her hands raised high. "No," she cried. The leader dismounted, a tall man with feathers in his hair and sorrow in his eyes. He looked at Naili and whispered her name. She ran to him and they embraced fiercely. Luke's rifle fell from his hand as he realized the truth. These weren't raiders. They were family. The older warrior turned to Luke. "You have cared for the daughter of our chief," he said in broken English. "We have searched the desert for her. She was taken by slavers, and we feared her lost." Luke's breath caught. "Chief's daughter?" He looked at Naili, who nodded slowly, tears shimmering in her eyes. "I hid who I was," she said. "You would not have taken me otherwise." The realization hit Luke hard. He hadn't just rescued a woman, he'd sheltered royalty. The Apache chief himself stepped forward from among the riders, his presence commanding. "White man," he said in a deep, solemn tone, "you showed mercy where others showed cruelty. For that you have our gratitude." Luke bowed his head. "She's free," he said simply. "Always was." Naili stepped toward him, her hand trembling as she touched his chest. "You gave me more than freedom," she whispered. "You gave me dignity." The chief nodded approvingly. "Our blood owes you a debt." But Luke shook his head. "No debts between good hearts." There was silence for a long moment, broken only by the rain. Then, to everyone's surprise, Naili turned back to her father. "I will stay," she said. The chief's eyes widened. "Your place is with your people." She looked at Luke, her expression soft but firm. My spirit belongs here. With him, the warriors murmured among themselves. But the chief only smiled faintly, as if seeing Destiny's hand at work.
Then stay, daughter of the plains, he said.
And may both your hearts find peace. When the Apache riders vanished into the mist, Luke and Nayeli stood side by side under the rain, their futures intertwined by chance, courage, and compassion. She looked at him and smiled for the first time. You took a slave, she said softly, but found a queen. Luke grinned, tipping his hat. Guess I never did know how to bargain. Right. And as thunder rolled, across the desert sky, the ranch once again found its heart, not in gold or cattle, but in love that defied every boundary.